Thank you. All right, good morning, everybody. Tony Rocco here with the division, and I am again facilitating today's meeting. So I, Structural Chief Tony Rocco, call the Residential and Manufactured Structures Board meeting of October 2nd, 2024 to order at 9:32 a.m. Katie, will you please call the roll?
Yes. In person, Abraham Kelso.
Here.
Thank you. James Austin.
I'm here.
Perfect. He is virtual. Forrest Barnes is absent, excused. Sean Blair.
Here.
He is virtual as well. Jason Sawyers is absent. Rich Fry.
Here.
He is in person. Douglas Lethane is absent. Matthew Lutter.
Here.
And he is virtual. Thank you. Emily Kemper is absent, and Chris Wong.
Here.
And he is virtual as well. And we do have quorum.
All right, thank you, Katie. That brings us up to taking a look at the board agenda today. Do any of the members have any changes to today's meeting agenda or the order of business? All right, seeing none, I rule the agenda and order of business approved. Looking at the draft meeting minutes of the last meeting, July 10th, 2024, do any members have any changes to the draft meeting minutes of July 10th, 2024? All right. Seeing none, I rule the draft minutes of July 10th, 2024 final. The date of the next board meeting is scheduled for January 8th, 2025. We'll touch on a couple of topics for that meeting later on in reports. That brings us up to 1F and the board vote for chair and vice chair. Ian, could you please introduce and explain this item for the board?
Thank you, Facilitator Rocco. Ian Paik, analyst with the division. We may now begin the process of electing a new chair and vice chair, or the board may choose to table these votes until the next board meeting. If the board wishes to proceed with nominations and electing a new chair and vice chair, I can explain that process if so. Thank you. What would the board like to do?
Through the chair, Rich Fry. We've been tabling this for quite some time now. I think that we should see if we have anyone that's interested at all in being the chair or the vice chair, and try to get this done. It's been close to a year now, I think, that we have not had anybody in that position. So if there's anybody out there, speak up, please. Okay, so can we nominate someone who's not here?
No, they have to accept the nomination.
All right, well, since no one else is expressed any interest or anything else, I'm willing to do this to facilitate the meetings and stuff, so I'll throw my name in there.
I'd be interested in vice chair.
Thank you. We have heard nominations for Rich Fry for chair and Abe Kelso for vice chair. The nominations are now closed. We can now vote. Katie, would you please call roll for the chair vote?
Abraham Kelso.
Yes.
James Austin.
Approved.
Sean Blair.
Approved.
Rich. Matthew Lutter.
Approved.
And Chris Wong.
Approved.
Thank you, Chair Fry. Would you like to take over for the rest of this meeting, or would you defer to Facilitator Rocco for today?
I'll defer to Facilitator Rocco for today, and I'll take over on the next meeting, the beginning of next year.
The nominations for vice chair have closed. Katie, would you please call roll for the vice chair vote?
Yes. James Austin.
Approved.
Sean Blair.
Approved.
Rich Fry,
Approved.
Matthew Lutter,
Approve.
and Chris Wong.
Approve.
So we can move on then from that item. We have everything we need. Thanks for throwing names out there, and thanks for offering up to do that. It's awesome. So I think that moves us on to item G, and this is a board vote for an additional member to join the Construction Industry Energy Board. Ian, could you introduce and explain this item for the board?
Thank you, Facilitator Rocco. Ian Paik, Analyst with the Division. With this, the board may now begin the process of voting for a membership representation to the Construction, Industry, and Energy Board. Are there any nominations for membership to the CIEB?
Can you explain a little bit about what that position is, how often it meets, any of the items that might help someone make a decision?
Yes, so the CIEB is a board is an amalgamation of our other boards, and they meet, I believe, 4 times a year, quarterly, and you would sit and then discuss things regarding construction, industry, and energy, and vote towards them, kind of representing the RMSB in those decisions.
And if I can add to that just a little bit about the CIEB board, they also act on the commercial energy provisions, which is Chapter 13 of the Oregon Structural Specialty Code. So that's a big piece of it, as well as Ian said, representing this board on that board.
I see here it says that the member must have practical experience in construction. Are there any other special qualifications?
No.
I don't have practical experience in construction, but I'm wondering if who among the 6 members present does?
I guess it would depend on how you would define practical experience. I know myself had been on the engineering side, but not necessarily on the construction side ever, but I've been part of the construction industry for, I don't know, a while now and everything, but not necessarily out in the field.
It is a very broad description, so I believe that would satisfy.
I'll share that I'm already a member of the CIEB board, and I don't have a whole lot of field experience in the construction industry, limited, but I think, yeah, some experience is probably good enough.
So is this, are there meetings also hybrid meetings where some are virtual? Okay. And are there quarterly similar in time to our meetings here? They are. But the time-wise, like ours is the second, is there sometime around now or?
Yes.
Okay. Well, is there anyone out there that would like to represent the board? Okay, I'll take that on temporarily then.
Great. Chair Fry, do you accept this nomination?
I do.
Thank you. Nominations are now closed. Facilitator Rocco, you may now call for a motion to approve the nominee, and then you may call for a roll call on that motion.
Right. Can I have a motion to approve the nominee, Rich Fry, to represent this board on the Construction Industry Energy Board?
Abraham Kelso,
Approved?
James Austin,
Approved.
Sean Blair,
Approved, and thank you.
Matthew Lutter,
Approved.
and Chris Wong.
Approved.
I'll say thank you for your vote of confidence.
All right, thanks for that, and thanks for representing this board on the CIEB board along with Matt. Okay, moving on, that brings us up to 1H, and a formal farewell to Rich Tovar. Rich served on the Residential Manufactured Structures Board as a representative of the residential building trade subcontractors. His term began September 23rd, 2019, and served until January 10th, 2024, following his last board meeting. Rich has asked that his certificate from the governor and letter of thanks from our administrator, Alana, be sent to him through the mail. So we just want to take a second to wish thank you to Rich Tovar for his service. I don't see Rich online. Not seeing him there. So thanks again to Rich for the service. Moving on to 1I, with a farewell, we have a welcome. Excited about this one. We're going to be welcoming our new board member, Chris Wong. Chris was confirmed by the Senate Interim Committee on Rules and Executive Appointments on September 24th, 2024, just a few days ago, to a partial 4-year term on the Residential Manufactured Structures Board. Chris is filling the vacant position representing structural engineers. His official term began October 1st, and he will be serving until June 30th, 2028. So we have you for a while, Chris. With that, welcome. Thank you, and would you like to say anything here for the board?
Yes, thank you. I'm excited. Looking forward to serving as best as I can. I got involved in this through the Structural Engineers Association of Oregon's Codes Committee. I was working through some of the code change proposals for the 2025 OSSC, and Jeremy Williams with BCD made a announcement that there was a vacant spot on this board for a structural engineer, and seeing that there hadn't been a applicant, it didn't sound like there's a whole lot of interest. I decided to just step forward and see how best I could help and contribute. I have had previous experience designing residential structures as well early in my career, and yeah, looking forward to it. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Chris. We really appreciate having you, and it's you're going to be bringing a wealth of experience and expertise to this board, and very excited about that. Okay. And then also wanted to note a reappointment to Jim Austin on the phone there. Mr. Austin has been reappointed for another 4-year term. His reappointment service is set to end on June 30th, 2027. So a big thanks to Jim for his service as well. Thanks, Jim. Do you have anything to say to the board?
No, just thank you, and I look forward to the next 4 years.
Excellent. All right. Thanks so much, Jim. Moving through the agenda, that brings us up to agenda item 2 in public comment. Ian, do we have anyone signed up for related public comment today?
Thank you, Facilitator Rocco. Ian Paik, analyst with the division. We did not receive any requests to provide general public comment to the board. However, I would like to take a moment just in case there's anyone in the room or online that would like to provide general public comment to the board. Hearing and seeing none, that concludes general public comment. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Ian. Moving right along up to 3, we are now in the report segment of the meeting, and we're going to start out with a residential program update. I'll be delivering that today for the board. So just a quick program update. Our team, the Housing and Building Safety team, we cover the ORSC and the OSSC. And so just providing a structural and residential update for this board. We just concluded the technical review committee process for the 2025 iteration of the OSSC. The Building Code Structures Board will be reviewing those committee recommendations next week at this same time on Wednesday, October 9th, 2024 at 9:30 a.m. After the board has completed their review and approvals of the promulgated 2025 OSSC, we will be again bringing the low-rise provisions back to this board for review and approval. And so this is that thing that I try to remind the board of every time. So the best reference for you is 455-010, and in definitions looking at low-rise dwelling code. So you look at that, and that kind of scopes what this board has purview over. And so that is basically three-story walk-ups, right? Low-rise apartments. And so this board acts directly on the ORSC, of course, when we go through the adoption and promulgation process for the ORSC. And then this board also maintains purview over those three-story walk-ups. So 3 stories or less with an exterior door for each unit, which is critical. Can't have any interior corridors or anything like that. It's a very small scope of low-rise apartments. And so those apartment designs are governed and scoped under the OSSC and the OMSC. However, again, they remain under the purview of this board. And so what you'll see once we go through the OSSC process, we always come back to this board for any of those code changes on the OSSC side that could impact or do impact low-rise apartments. And so then bring it back to this board for concurrence. So that's something that we'll be looking towards probably at the January meeting. I imagine it depends on what leadership decides from a timing standpoint. But just be aware of that. That's something coming in the near future. And then additionally, our technical team has been working on a reasonable technical solution to hopefully further support affordable housing efforts in Oregon. And this solution would allow for stacked two-family dwellings, or commonly referred to as duplexes, non-technical term, to be situated adjacent to and connected to other stacked two-family dwellings under the ORSC scope and application. And so we've been working on this as basically being a solution to small kind of apartments, often referred to as fourplexes or sixplexes. There has been a push and an ongoing desire by industry to allow for these smaller apartment designs to be built using prescriptive ORSC provisions, in particular R60210, and the language that we know of in Chapter 3 for climatic and geographic design criteria. So, and then also potentially looking at a small number of units to possibly be constructed without the mandate of a sprinkler system. Of course, under the application of the OSSC, that's a 13R system, even for a 4-unit apartment. Whereas if we have 2 stacked two-family dwellings connected to each other, you could potentially get away with maybe a 13D system, or potentially discuss, a small number of units that wouldn't have sprinklers, like maybe 4 total units not having a sprinkler system. And so this is just in the initial stages of being a technical solution to kind of address industry's stated desires and needs. And so we'll likely be bringing the detailed amendment concept to this board in January, and the hopes would be to add it to the ORSC as an interim amendment. So under the 2023 ORSC currently, where we've been looking is probably in R3023, in that realm. We already have that new language that addresses two-family dwellings that are separated by an actual real property line, and what to construct at that, demising wall from a fire resistance rating standpoint. And so anyways, the details, we've sent it out. We've had some outreach with local government partners and builders and developers, and all of the feedback has been overwhelmingly positive about the concept. We do have kind of a summary document, so if any board members would like to see that general summary document, just ping me. I'm happy to send it out. Like I said, we've sent it out to many folks across the state, many different jurisdictions and builders and developers. So more to come on that, something to look forward to in that January meeting. And that's all I have for my update. So, or do we have any questions? Any questions from the board before I turn things over for an energy update to Kelly Thomas? Any questions? Okay, seeing none, we have an energy update from Mr. Kelly Thomas. Hey, Kelly.
Hello, Chair Fry, Vice Chair Kelso. Sounds pretty good, right? And members of the board, I'm Kelly Thomas, Energy Policy Analyst with the division. First, let you know, I've been developing a 3-part series of residential energy code training videos for building officials, plan reviewers. Covers Chapter 11 of the energy provisions. Part 1, which is energy code basics, that's complete. We've got Part 2, it's going to cover intake and review, and Part 3 covers inspections. Part 2 and Part 3 are nearly complete, the video portion. We delivered the whole thing to the OBOA last week and went pretty well. But we're going to post these videos to the Energy Code website, so sometime this fall. And, you know, when you get a chance, when they're up, take a look. They're pretty short, 45 minutes or less, but pretty informative. The ancillary benefit is that while they're, you know, focused on the building code official, it's available to the construction and community, all design, construction. In fact, you know, even if you have practical experience, you can review these videos. So we'd love to get your feedback about that, and any other resources that might be of use, just let us know. And secondly, we were awarded recently, just the last month, a Rural Workforce Development Grant that it's in conjunction with NIA, and they're the regional organization with Earth Advantage. We're going to try to improve energy code compliance in rural areas. So the focus is to fill the gap of raters, what they're called ERI, the rating index, our performance path, or they're called HERS raters in the Pacific Northwest. So this is, you know, Washington, us, but, you know, there's a significant gap in these people that are trained to do it. So what that's going to do is help us with the federal tax incentives that we all put in the REACH code. Those are you need these raters to attain those. So we're looking at, it's a 5-year project, you know, helping build the workforce training system, remote training, digitized quality assurance, you know, working with the rural economic development boards and organizations, really just look at a labor market analysis, see what kind of a business potential is, and then use it as like a replicable model for any state. I mean, Wyoming can pick it up and use it if it's something that worked. So that's it in terms of that grant. And then, you know, finally, mechanical board update that's relative to this board. Just to let you know, the adoption process for the 2025 OMSC is moving forward, and Mechanical Code Committee review, they met twice. They completed their work on September 12th, and the results from that are being forwarded to the December Mechanical Board for consideration and adoption. So then after that, those recommendations we will bring to you, any relevant revisions they make that affect low-rise dwellings, which is under your purview. So one item that we did want to point out is the Mechanical Code Committee recommended an increase in continuous mechanical ventilation. So this would be for, you know, the R2 low-rise that's increasing the rate. So it's not done, it's still going to the mechanical board, but we'll keep you apprised of this as this moves forward and bring it forward as necessary. So any questions on this stuff or anything else?
Any questions for Kelly? Okay. Thanks, Kelly. All right. And moves on to item 4, communications. There are no communications for this meeting. Item 5, appeals. There are no appeals for the meeting. Item 6, there's no unfinished business for the meeting. And that brings us up to item 7 and the new business, item 7A. And Ian, could you please introduce this item and direct the Rulemaking Advisory Committee portion of this item? Thank you.
Thank you, Facilitator Rocco. Ian Paik, analyst with the division. With this agenda item, the division requests the board's review and approval of the proposed rule and definition defining visitability for the purpose of the Oregon House Needs Analysis, or OHNA, in addition to their participation in the proposed Rulemaking Advisory Committee. House Bill 2001 is a 2023 bill that establishes the OHNA. The OHNA's purpose is to further the production of affordable housing and the production of housing that affirmatively furthers fair housing as defined in ORS 197.290. One of the indicators for each city in new housing is new housing units built to standards as defined by the Department of Consumer Business Services by rule relating to accessibility and visitability. This definition is limited in application to structures governed by the Oregon Residential Specialty Code and states accessible design provisions from the referenced national standard. The proposed rule language and definition, as well as an informational document developed by the division, are included in your agenda packet. This board will also serve as the Rulemaking Advisory Committee for the rulemaking process and will discuss, along with interested members of the public, the potential impacts of this rulemaking. Specifically, the group must discuss the potential fiscal and economic impacts of this rulemaking and the potential racial equity impacts of this rulemaking. Please making sure to include the finding on those two potential impacts into the board's ultimate motion on this agenda. Lastly, members of the public, please identify yourself before providing comment. Facilitator Rocco, would you like to open it up to the board or the public first for discussion?
Why don't we open it up to the public first, and folks can raise their hand and then introduce themselves if they'd like to speak, and then we can move to the board and then just continue the discussion from there?
Perfect.
Great, thank you.
So members of the public, would you please raise your hand online if you would like to provide any comments on this proposed rulemaking to the board and the Rulemaking Advisory Committee generally. Mr. Klyber, I see your hand is raised. Would you please identify yourself and provide comment to the committee? Thank you.
Hello, my name is Joshua Klyber. I work for a company called Jensen Hughes and am a principal of accessibility and universal design. I also work extensively in affordable housing across Oregon and wanted to make sure that the committee was aware that there already was an existing definition for visitability according to an ORS statute. And this alternate definition is in use by the Oregon Housing and Community Services for application to its public housing any public housing that it provides funding to. And these two definitions, the proposed one under the Type C units, under the A117.1 and the Oregon Revised Statute, have slightly different definitions, and wanted to encourage that there is consistency across the board, or at least awareness and clarity about which definition is in use. Just moving towards consistency. So one of the questions I had was whether there had been outreach to Kevin Burgee, the state architect that coordinates and enforces this other rule, to kind of make sure that there is some level of consistency between the two. I have submitted a written comment as well. Hopefully all of you have a copy of that. In that comment, I crafted up a little table that shows the differences between the two definitions. The primary one is that the ORS definition requires a 32-inch clear opening, where Type C units require a 31 and a 3/4 inch clear width. The difference between those two, minor difference between those two elements, however, has a larger impact that it requires the ORS requires a 3/0 door, where the Type C units require a minimum of a 210 door. And so there is a pretty significant design difference between those two things. In most other ways, the A117.1 Type C units are more strict. And lastly, I want to clarify that I am in support of going with this national model code standard, just wanting there to be conformity with what is happening in other parts of the state and other departments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Klyber. Before the board and the committee addresses that, are there any other members of the public that would like to provide comment to the committee? At any time, if you do wish to do so, please raise your hand. But seeing none currently, I will open it up to the RMSB to discuss Mr. Klyber's comment and then also the proposed rule making generally. Thank you.
Do we have any comments from the board? If I could start out here, just to address Mr. Klyber's comment. So the division here, we adopt standards for construction, reconstruction, alteration, and repair. And I think that we may be the only one that has that statutory authority. And so to clarify the difference between ORS 456, which is not applicable here to what we're discussing, and 455, this would be just aligning with the law and the requirement from the bill for us to adopt standards or definition for visitability. And that's what we're trying to do here, is just simply add it to rule and then point to the standard that customers could voluntarily follow for consistent, predictable standards, construction standards and provisions for Type C units. So hopefully that helps. Any other board members have anything, any notes, any comments about this proposed rule?
I have a question. regarding this. So I just want to make sure I clearly understand. Oh, sorry, this is Board Member Chris Wong. I just wanted to make sure I understand the context in this proposed definition. And this is really going to be used as a tracking indicator with regards to the visitability elements that are supposed to be tracked by the what's requested of the House Bill 2001 and the associating ORSs. Is that correct? And that there currently is no code requirement to provide a Type C unit, my understanding, and that this is the Type C unit standard in the A117 is purely a voluntary element currently.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. You're 100% correct. So one, this is just one of the indicators from that bill is referring to features, accessibility features, which we already have very clearly scoped and defined, right? Especially when we're talking about housing. We have Type A and Type B units. We don't require accessible units for housing, right? We have the 3 unit types: fully accessible, the Type A, or the old adaptable units, and then the Type B, right? And so we have those 3 units that are required of all, Group Rs, and accessible units don't apply to housing. Apartment houses are those Group R2s, right? So we only get the accessible units for R1s, transient, right? Places of lodging. And so then, yes, this is just identifying that other piece that is required in the law, which is for us to have defined visitability by rule. And so what better to do than to turn to the Type C unit. As you look in the supporting documents in your board packet, there's a document that has background information, and it also includes national model commentary. And if I could just read that for the record. This comes from the 2017 ANSI A117.1, and it says, currently neither model building codes nor the standard address the scoping requirements for when and in what quantity the Type C visitable units would be required. During the standard development process, it was the committee's assumption that these units would generally be applied to dwellings that were not regulated by the requirements of the FHA, in our world, covered multifamily dwellings, including townhouses and single-family homes. So again, we're trying to just capture, under the scope of the ORSC, right, which aren't covered multifamily dwellings, covered by the FHA and by the Type B units, of course, what would we have in place? And so we'd have this Type C unit, it's nationally recognized, and then this standard would just be there for any type of voluntary customer compliance. So if they wanted to look at some visitability standards and voluntarily include those in development of one or more homes, then there would be something consistent and predictable for them to use. I hope that helps. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
The board or public members have no other discussion or questions. I would like to point the group to discuss, based on your expertise and experiences, members of the public and board members, could you foresee any potential fiscal or economic impacts of this rulemaking, positive or negative in any way, minimal or great? Seeing a lot of head shaking and possible. Does the Rule Advisory Committee think that there would be a minimal potential fiscal impact from this rulemaking?
Any thoughts from anyone here about the fiscal impact? Again, this would only be voluntary. It's not an amendment to code. It has its place in 918-480. It's, it would just be, again, just outlining a consistent and predictable standard for folks to voluntarily follow.
It's hard to describe impacts of something that's voluntary. So I have no comment there.
Yes, Mr. Klyber?
I have a question about whether that is the fiscal impacts is solely to the public, or does that include fiscal impacts to the jurisdictions that are tracking this information as well?
It includes both.
Has there been any discussion about the processes to track this amongst the residential, new residential permits that are coming through? And what kind of fiscal impact for training, for the additional kind of logging of the which houses were and were not meeting these visibility requirements.
So if I could jump in, I don't believe that we're doing any fiscal for the OHNA itself, right? So this is just about the visitability piece. I don't know if that helps, Mr. Klyber. So the OHNA would be through a separate process. That's not related to this, what we're doing today. This is just about the definition and the voluntary, path for folks to follow.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I could, Rich Fry through the board. Basically, this is similar to the process of the REACH code. It's just aspirational, and if people choose to go above and beyond the code, and as we do with the REACH code, but it's not something that the jurisdictions can make their base code. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair, that is absolutely correct.
Okay. And under that, if there's no further discussion, I'll make a motion to approve.
We'll have to discuss the
I'm
racial
sorry.
equity one as well. Before we make a motion, the racial equity impact.
All right, sorry.
So hearing that the fiscal and economic impact will be minimal, I'd like to move us to our last question. Does the board or any interested members of the public see any potential racial equity impacts of this rulemaking, similar to how if we saw any fiscal or economic impacts to this rulemaking?
There's been discussion of tracking whether this quality exists in existing residences. Is that like logging or tracking going to something that's going to be conducted in the future, or has it been conducted already?
That's a great question, Mr. Vice Chair. So that's the OHNA, so the Oregon Housing Needs Analysis. So that's where the tracking would occur. It's separate from what we're talking about today, and this would be an element or an indicator of that potential tracking and how they do that. But separate process through OHCS and through DLCD.
Hearing and seeing no further discussion on this, if the board is content with the discussion and would like to make a motion, please ensure that in addition to your motion that you will add the findings of the fiscal and racial equity impacts of this discussion. For example, motion to approve the proposed rule and definition and forward to the administrator for formal rulemaking with the findings that there will be minimal impacts to fiscal, economic, and racial equity from the proposed rulemaking would be an example motion, because you will have to include the findings from our RAC. Thank you.
Okay, through the board, Rich Fry. I'm going to have you help me with this. So I make a motion to approve the proposed rule and definition and forward to the administrator for formal rulemaking.
With the findings.
With the finding that there will be minimal impact to physical, economic, and racial equity. Thank you.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none. Katie, can you call a roll call vote?
Yes. Abraham Kelso,
Approved.
James Austin,
Approved.
Sean Blair,
Approved.
Rich Fry,
Approved.
Matthew Lutter,
Approved.
and Chris Wong.
Approved.
It is approved unanimously, sir.
Great, thanks, Katie. All right, and thank you to the board. Okay, so that moves us past, that was our only new business item today, and so it moves us on to item 8, announcements. Do any of the board members have any announcements today? All right, seeing none, that moves us to adjournment. Thanks for everybody's time today and for being here. There being no further business, the Residential and Manufactured Structures Board meeting is adjourned at, I have 10:14. Thanks, everybody. Good to see you online. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.